Hey, welcome to Tag Me. My name is Ben, and today we are going to be taking a look at some of the 2024 World Championship starter decks. For the startup side, that is. We've been following, if you haven't been following along, we've been playing a lot of Netrunner, the card game, and paying close attention to the startup card pool. Just because that's the one that I've been really interested in right now, and I'm really trying to pack in as many startup games as I can. So I've been going through and making these decks, but last week we looked at the Corporation World Championship decks to see what they were doing, and today I figured we're going to be going and doing the same thing on the runner side with the runner side decks that won the World Championship. So we're going to go through the same two deck builders here, or the same decks that they used anyway, Grendel X and Bard Tree here. So we'll go and look at start with Mercury, and then go and take a look at Seb and see what he's got going on. How y'all doing? Hope everyone's had a good week, by the way. I yesterday was able to go play some more Netrunner in person, which is always my favorite way to play the game. And I got to practice both of my decks, including the Wayland deck that I tinkered with and added the Clearinghouse to, thanks to the help of doing the stream actually and watching the last World Championship decks. So the Clearinghouse did have an effect, and the Hearts and Minds. It definitely changed how the deck played and how the runner interacted with it. We were able to be a little bit more glacier and force them to act. And I don't think I was quite as successful as I wanted to be. I'm still kind of working out the kinks and the differences, because it is a different style of deck now. Which is good. That's what we wanted to do. That's why we added the threat with the Clearinghouse, to give it two avenues to win. So I think we're on the right track with it. I just want to push it a little bit more, and maybe we'll get around to that too. But I wanted to start with the runner decks here first. So this Mercury is the first. Yes, this is the first place deck. So we'll start with the ID itself. Whenever you breach HQ or R&D during a run, if you did not break any subroutines during that run, you may access one additional card. Use this ability only once per turn. So this immediately tells me we're going to see a lot of like Physarum Entanglers, probably Inside Jobs and Estabrados, and different ways for Mercury to sneakily kind of avoid things. Probably Hermes, and I can see that, yeah, Hermes makes sense as well, because that's going to be able to bounce the ice and give other avenues to run and keep that ability going. But we'll talk about all that. So just broadly speaking, I don't even know, this deck has a lot of events, ton of events, and ton of everything. But okay, let's start with some of this hardware, because I think this is kind of going to be where the deck gets shaped primarily. And as I mentioned, it's 3 times Hermes. So with this one, whenever an agenda is scored or stolen, add one unrezzed card to HQ. And this is really good with a deck like Mercury, because the Corporation isn't incentivized to run. Or excuse me, the Corporation isn't incentivized to res, because they are playing things like Inside Job, which lets you bypass it, which lets you bypass a rezzed piece of ice. So if you have one piece of ice in front of a server, for example, and I Inside Job it, even if you res that piece of ice, I'm just going to skip it. So why would you bother? And if you have 2 pieces of ice in front of a single server and I Inside Job that server, assuming they're both unrezzed, if you res the uppermost piece of ice, then as I said before, we're going to bypass that with Inside Job, because now it's rezzed. But if you don't res it, and then we skip to it and res the second piece of ice, technically with the way the game works is we've only encountered that first piece of ice that you rezzed, even though it's the second piece of ice in the server. So you are using one card to make the Corporation res 2 pieces of ice that they probably don't want to res and ruin the surprise, or they're just going to let you in this time. And usually what happens often is they just let you in this time. So you end up with a lot of unrezzed cards sometimes. So with Hermes, you can actually undo that board state either at any point during the game. If you're scoring, you can undo that board state, or if the Corporation is scoring, you can undo that board state. So effects like Inside Job combined with Hermes are really, really powerful in a deck like Mercury, where you're getting additional accesses as long as you aren't encountering the ice. So you actually win because you're not encountering the ice, and you win because you access more cards. So it's good for every situation. And while we're talking about some of these tricks, maybe we'll talk about the tool sets that this deck is using. So Inside Job is helping them bypass ice, but so is Estebrado. And Estebrado is a little bit different. Run Essential Server. The first time you encounter a piece of ice during that run, bypass it. And then Threat 4, the second time you encounter a piece of ice during that run, you may spend a click to bypass it. So this one's a bit more nuanced, but it has a restriction. It's not as open as Inside Job, right? It has to be Essential Server. Still has that same effect, though, where you bypass the first piece of ice you encounter. So it has the Inside Job effect where if you have two pieces of ice, both have to be rezzed in order for you to encounter one of them, which is really strong. But with this one, later in the game, so Threat 4 means when either player has 4 points, this text is active. So after you or the corporation have scored 4 points, later in the game, now the second time you encounter a piece of ice during that run, you can spend an additional click to bypass it as well. So this scales really well late into the game, where a single card could get you past 2 rezzed pieces of ice. And then with Mercury, again, if you're pressuring HQ or R&D, you're seeing extra cards for free. So it's finding different ways to leverage your ability in really cohesive ways, I think. So similar effect, Estebrado and Inside Job, really good. Both of them are cost 2. So that is important because that's not cheap. It's not a cheap effect necessarily, but it's a very powerful effect. And to help with that, we're going to go look at this hardware again. So again, this is installed for the whole game, is Prepaid Voice Pad. At 2 cost, this has, again, been around for a long time. You might be familiar with it already. 1 recurring credit, and you can spend the hosted credits to pay or to play events. So if you have one of these installed, it is the first credit when you are trying to Inside Job. So for the first Inside Job or first event you play, it costs 1 less, which is really strong. You get your money back pretty quick with something like this, because it only costs you 2, and really a deck like this with 23 events, you're going to be playing an event every turn, or you should be trying to play an event every turn, and I think most of them will have some type of cost. So the 2 prepaid voice pad are really good. I imagine that both of them, you would want to play both of them, I think, and have them both on the game on the board. So great card. We want to have both of them on the board. And Hermes, we play 3 of because we want to see it as soon as we possibly can, right? The other hardware to round this out is our Docklands Pass, and first time you breach HQ, access an additional card. Really good, nice, reliable effect. Makes sense. It's almost always a one of in a startup, I think, because there's nothing else that's as reliable, but this combined with Mercury, you can access 3 cards out of HQ. So if you really want, you can make 1 run and see over half of the card, most likely over half of the cards in HQ, is a really powerful effect. So it combos really nicely with your ability, in addition to just being solid all around, even if you do end up breaking something on HQ. So that's really good. So we've talked about the hardware and kind of I think the Hermes and the prepaid are really important. Let's go through some of these other events and figure out how else it's going to try and leverage that prepaid voice pad economy. Same thing. So Bahia Bands, run any server, successful, resolve 2 of the following in any order. Draw 2, install a card from your grip, paying 1 less, remove a tag, place 4 on this event, 2 trash cards for the run. Again, this is a very, very flexible card. We talked a bit about that last week, where having the ability to flex to any of these card effects in a given a board state is very, very strong. Because even if it's just pay 2, make a run, draw 2, and install a card, the click compression that you get for 2 credits is huge. Drawing 2 cards is 2 clicks right there, so that you could be considering I'm drawing 2 cards instead of clicking for 2 credits or something. And then install a card paying 1 less. So that 1 less makes this card cost 1 effectively, right? If you consider the discount, and gives you an install right before an access, which might combo with other cards too. So, or you could use it to remove tags if you're playing against an NBN deck that wants to give you tags, or you can place 4 on it to trash cards, and it can help you with economy if you're playing like a horizontal NBN or horizontal HB or something like that. So a lot of flexibility. That's why it costs the influence. But again, even if we're playing with the prepaid too, you could potentially play this for 0, and it's a very, very strong card. So I feel like this was partially just they had an influence left over, and it's a great way to use an influence. Career Fair, install a resource from your grip, paying 3 credits less. So we probably have some, yeah, I can say we definitely have some resources. This will help. We'll talk about this in a little bit in more detail when we get to the resources. Dirty Laundry, 2 credits run any server. When that run ends, if it was successful, gain 5. This is, again, a pretty big staple, I think, in a lot of decks right now. It enforces you to do things you already want to do, so it costs you a small upfront investment with the 2, and then after you're done, after you've accessed your cards, of course, you gain 5 credits back, and that helps you keep momentum. So if you can combo this into a remote that you already want to run, it's just something that's going to give you money afterwards, as long as you didn't need those 2 credits. And with the prepaid voice pad, you could make that cost 0. And again, I'm going to keep bringing up the prepaid. Just remember, any of these events can get cheaper, and they are only going to get better when they cost less. So prepaid just makes all of these cards even better than we're already going to talk about them. So just keep that in mind too. But very, very good. Gets you an access, gets you money, keeps your momentum going, and lets you help sustain. We already talked about the inside job. Jailbreak is pretty good. It's again another way to access more cards, and it helps keep pushing you forward. Jailbreak is really nice because it lets you draw a card, and when you breach the attack server, you access 1 additional card. So this pressures 2 servers. The corporation can't just assume, oh, it's a criminal, they only care about HQ, which is still a fallacy a lot of the time at every level of play. People will usually assess right at the beginning from the game, and maybe you've done this and are familiar. You're a corporation. You sit down, you look across the table. It's Seb. Oop, hit the microphone. Sorry about that. It's Seb. What is Seb going to want to do? And this was actually something that I ran into last night. I sat across from Seb, and I looked at my opponent, and I'm like, what is the most important thing that you're going to want to hit? And I ended up icing, you roll the dice every time. You never know what it's going to be. I did HQ and archives. So, and for criminal, usually it's like HQ, so to keep your hand safe or to protect you from their effects like Mercury or Steve Cambridge. But with cards like Jailbreak, you can play into the corporation's tendencies a bit, and it combos with your ID. So if you get first turn, if the corporation leaves R&D open, thinking, oh, it's a criminal, they just want to hit HQ, then you can get a cheeky Jailbreak off turn 1 and see 3 cards right off the rip. Click 1. And Jailbreak draws a card back to your hand to replace itself. So it's really, really strong and can be a good surprise, I think, in a lot of board states. So probably why we have 3 of. Mutual Favor. Event, search your stack for an icebreaker to reveal it. If you make a successful run this turn, you may install it. Criminal historically have a problem finding their breakers. And since we only play 1 of each of our core breakers over here, Mutual Favor is just going to help us along and help get our rig together. So makes sense that it's a 1 of. I feel like we're going to be drawing a lot in this deck, so hopefully we don't want to use that for our first breaker, ideally. We probably want to find a breaker and then maybe apply a little pressure and then Mutual Favor to go get another breaker when the corporation thinks they have an upper hand. So the 1x makes sense. Estebrado we've talked about already. Sure Gamble, again, this is in almost every runner deck that you'll see. Cost money, gain money. Good card. Trick Shot. Card that is legal in startup, not in standard. Super strong effect. 1 credit, run event. Place 4 on this event. You can spend hosted credits during runs. Run R&D if successful. Place 2 credits on this event and access 1 additional card when you breach R&D. When that run ends, you may run a remote server. Where to begin? It is 1 credit. It gives you 4 credits right off the go. It includes a run, and if it's successful, you get 2 cards to see an extra card off R&D. All of these things are really good. The additional effect is whether or not your run on run on R&D was successful, you can then pivot and run a remote server. So this can be used to give you some extra credits to run a remote server. This can be used to help you dive R&D a bit harder. And it just gives you a lot of economy, and it does a lot of things. You can't talk enough about this card. There's a reason it's banned in startup or standard. Yeah, there's a reason it's banned in standard, and why it's in the startup deck. So Trick Shot makes sense. It is a lot of influence. So it says limited card. I think this is listed as a standard. A standard thing, unless I'm very wrong and out of date. But we'll look at that in a minute, I suppose. Window of opportunity. You may install a program or piece of hardware from your grip, run any server. When that run begins, derez 1 piece of ice protecting that server. When that run ends, the corp may res the derezed ice this way, ignoring all costs. Again, this card has a lot of text, and it's always surprising what it does and how it can interact with the game. So first of all, it's 1 credit and it lets you make a run. So at its core, this is saying we're running right now. That's usually a pretty good start for a card. I like going on runs. That's how we win. So great. Now, it also is letting us say we are using that same click to install something for that run. So we can use Window of Opportunity to install the Docklands Pass before we run HQ. We can use the Window of Opportunity to install a program or like an icebreaker that we have over here, so we can use it to install one of our Carmen or Shibboleth or Kurapira or even Fazarum Entangler if we want. So it's going on a run, and it's installing a card. Click compression. This is what we talk about. This is really good. And then the last effect is when that run begins, derez a piece of ice protecting that server. When that run ends, the corp may res the derezed ice this ice derezed this way, ignoring all costs. So you can temporarily shut down a piece of ice that the corporation may not want to re-res, like an archer, for example, because the archer has an additional cost of forfeiting an agenda. So they don't really want to res it again, or Cloud Eater, or any of these really high cost ice, even something like a Brawn or something at 6 strength. The corporation really is going to have to think twice on whether or not they want to res that card again, because 6 cost is quite the investment when you've already spent 6 credits to res a piece of ice. So that gives the corporation a really hard decision to make, or gives you the ability to get into a server much cheaper than you would normally, because a Brawn or an Atini or a Cloud Eater or any of these pieces of ice that we're mentioning, they're all very expensive pieces of ice for the runner to break in the game. It's not a super clean way to do it in most cases. So Window of Opportunity is a way to either force the corporation, it kind of is a way to flex, like, right? It's either denying the corporation money, which historically has been a big thematic sticking point for criminal and making them lose money that they've earned or spend extra money for things, which I think is great. Or it's letting you get into a server for cheaper than you would be able to normally, which is kind of like bypassing. It's kind of like what this deck is kind of already trying to do. So it makes a lot of sense. That you would see something in a deck like this where we want to get in without actually interacting with the ice as little as we possibly can. So really cool card. I actually personally think that this is something that could fit in a lot of decks right now. I think it's in my Arasana deck that I was playing last night. So I am really high on this card, and I think it's a card that you don't need to use to get all of the effects out of for it to be successful. And I think that's something that's hard for me as a card gamer to kind of like wrap my head around sometimes, because it's like the card has all, it says all of these words. I need to make sure I get all of these words worth of value, but really like half or 2/3 of those words are really good put together. So I think this is one that's worth considering in a lot of decks, and I love seeing 2 of it here. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your thoughts on Window of Opportunity. I think it's a really cool card. Have you guys used this before? Yeah, if you've used it before, let me know. Yesterday I actually did this. I used Window of Opportunity to de-res an archer during an R&D run, so that felt really good. I was able to just use it to kind of like turn it off for a little bit. I didn't have a good answer to the archer. Unfortunately, it didn't win me the game at that time, but the install worked too. And I used the install to install a card for a run after I ran R&D too. So I was able to think ahead and plan a little bit better. And I think I got a really good reaction, or I got a good use out of the card, using it in a way that is a little bit less direct, we'll say. All right, so let's talk about the resources here. We have some money things again down here. Some more money, more accesses, so it's really good. We're going to start from the bottom and go up here. First one is Liberated Accounts. When you install this resource, load 16 onto it. When it is empty, trash it. And as a click, you can take 4 credits from this resource. It requires a bit of an investment, and it takes a lot of time, but you can get a lot of money back from it. And this is comparable to Telework Contract, I would say. I think Telework is a bit more influence. I think it's 3 influence, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong, but so that might be the reason that we see Liberated here. But it's a good way to get money. It's just slow, and I think this deck is one that doesn't want to be rushing into or making runs that are going to hurt it down the line. So it can go a bit slower, it can be more calculated, and use the money here really well, because this deck, even having a breaker out, can be good to start dissuading runs. So it's a good way to get money going just for economy, or to start putting pressure down. So it makes sense. It's a good card. If you've been around for a while, you probably have seen that one as well. We got Earthrise Hotel. When you install this resource, 4 cost. When you install this resource, place 3 power counters on it. When it's empty, trash it. When your turn begins, remove 1 hosted power counter and draw 2 cards. So clickless draw for 3 turns. Just spend 4 money and get 6 cards spread out over 3 turns. It's a really good way to see to maximize your efficiency, in that you're not spending clicks to draw cards. And when you're a deck like this, that is really important. And I say a deck like this because it has 23 events, and all of the events are one-time use, right? So once we spend the event, it goes away forever. And that means we're essentially using a card in our hand to get a effect once, which means the cards in our hand, we constantly need them, because that's how we're generating most of the value and most of the strength of our deck, is through these cards. And Earthrise gives us a way to keep filling our hand with these resources in a way that lets us just use our clicks for momentum, and we can spend our clicks on Estebrado to later in the game to get through multiple iced centrals. and then we can even draw more cards after that. And I think this is definitely a deck that is going to draw a lot through the basic action, in addition to the Earthrise. But one click from Liberated to gain 4 credits, you turn around and you spend another click and the 4 money you just gained to get 6 card draw for 3 turns. It makes sense. It's a really strong effect, and is a good use of resources in a deck like this, where we want our hand to be full all the time. It gives us the most options and the most ability to do different things that the court might not be able to suspect. And to help with those run events that we have is Debbie Downtown Morera. Resource connection, threat 4. When you install this resource, place 2 credits on it. And again, this later in the game, this just helps increase the value of her. And whenever you play a run event, place a credit on this resource. And as a click, we can run any server and spend hosted credits during that run. So ideally, we get Debbie down on the table early, right? And over the course of the game, we just play our cards, we make our runs, and we play all of these 23 run events that we have, and we slowly just accrue money on Debbie. And eventually, when we get to late game and the corporation has built up a remote server, with 2 or 3 pieces of ice, maybe we have 2 breakers out and a Physarum in our hand or something, and we just need money to attack the mega server and get through a Managarm, we can just spend a click, use Debbie, and say, all right, we have been saving this entire time to make these runs and get through the super server. Or if we're playing like a sideways asset spam deck, we can just use Debbie to help us trash the assets or the upgrades or the threats in the remote servers that the corporation is putting out. So it can be used in a couple of different ways as well, and makes sense that we have 2. We would like to see it as early as we can, but we only really need 1. So pretty good effect, and it makes sense because this deck plays Baya bands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 run events. So if we get, we'll say half of that, if we get 9 credits of value on this card for 1 credit, a click for a net of 9 credits is great, or net of 8 credits, is a really good baseline for a card. So I think it makes sense that you would play her in a deck like this. So pretty cool include. You don't see her that often, admittedly. I think people, including myself, it feels weird because it's something, like I mentioned, you want to have 2 of or 3 of, but once you have one, it doesn't feel so good to draw, and if you draw her late in the game or too late in the game, spending just getting 2 credits to put on her feels like not worth the value at that point. So it can feel funny, but in a deck like this, I think you're almost always gonna get inherent value just by having her out. So I think it's a good thing to have in here. And then with our last bit of influence, so all of our influence, by the way, has pretty much been on Trickshot and Liberated for the most part. And our last bit of influence is Pretty Mary Da Silva. Another connection. When you breach R&D, if you are allowed to access 2 or more cards during the breach, you may access 1 additional card. So this works with RID, and this works with Jailbreak, and this works with Trickshot, right? So there's a lot of different ways that this can allow us to see an additional card without really any added cost. It's a 1 credit connection. It's almost free to install, kind of like Debbie. Maybe a bit harder to pull off, but I think the effect of Mary is a bit better, because an extra card lets you take a turn off of running R&D. And that could be saving 2, 3, 4 credits, or saving 1 of your events that you're holding in your hand. So being able to see deeper into R&D and see even more of what's ahead lets you not only plan for that, but it lets you take a turn or 2 off from running R&D again, which is also another way to save money, or keep some value there. So really, really good. All of these cards, like we mentioned, all these cards are feeding back into the theme of the deck and feeding back into the ID ability to let us, we're breaching R&D and we're going to try and not, we don't want to pay for things and we want to see extra cards, right? And if we are trying to do these things, how can we just do that more? Run events, we want to run and see cards. All these, everything makes sense. It's great. It's a good, really, really nice deck building. And with our icebreakers, or again, we talked about it, we just have one of each and are backing it up with the Mutual Favor and our Physarum. So our one of Carmen, 5 cost, icebreaker killer. When you've made a successful run, it costs 2 less to install, so easy way to get cheaper. Interface 1, break a sentry, 1 credit, break 1 sentry, and 2 cost plus 3 strength with a base of 2 strength. So pretty good numbers on it. It can break a lot of sentries. It's just good. It can break any sentry. It just costs you money, but it's a good base strength. Can get pretty expensive to increase the strength. If we were talking about an archer, cost 4 credits to get up to strength, but still not bad. Really good numbers on the Carmen overall. I feel like this is something that you see in a lot of decks, not just startup. And for our barriers, we have Kurapira, our Fractor, 3 cost. Whenever you encounter a barrier, we can spend 3 hosted power counters to bypass it. And whenever this program fully breaks a piece of ice, place 1 power counter on this program. Interface 1 cost to break a barrier subroutine, and 1 cost plus 1 strength. So numbers-wise, it's kind of like a corroder, right? 1 cost, 1 strength, 1 cost, 1 break. That's pretty standard. However, this other effect is really the reason that we play this breaker modernly, right? It's because when we use it, we power it up. Once it powers up, we can use it to bypass ice again. And we're circling back and bringing our ID ability back into the fold again and using it to help us trigger our ID. So even if the corporation reses their big piece of brawn or their big ice, their burly strength barrier over HQ or R&D, we can still use this card and power it up on the cheaper breakers like the pings of the world or the ablative barriers or any of these things where it doesn't cost us a lot to get it up to strength. And then we can use these power counters that we've accrued to get into the server for cheap and save a bunch of money and help trigger our ID. So makes a lot of sense to have this in the deck as well. But again, we keep that theme. We're using it to bypass. Bypass means our ID ability triggers. Makes a lot of sense. And to round it out with our decoder or shibboleth, icebreaker decoder, 1 cost, threat 4, this program gets -2 strength. Bit different. Interface 1, break a code gate subroutine, 2 credits plus 2 strength with a base of 3 strength. So as the game continues, this gets weaker, which makes it a bit harder. It's a bit funny because not many cards do that, but it's still a code gate breaker and it doesn't cost us influence. This is just comes down to deck building. I think you could arguably turn it to Cat's Cradle if you want, but I think this deck doesn't really want to be spending credits to break things. So I think this is mostly just a break in case of emergency card. I don't think this is primarily how we want to be getting through our code gates, if I had to imagine, especially late game when shibboleth is 1 strength and it costs us 2 to increase it 2 to get it back to where it started the game. It feels pretty bad. So this is, break glass in case of emergency card, if I had to guess. And so this is, I always forget this card exists. This is called Melandridum, 4 cost program. When you install this program, load 2 power counters onto it. When it is empty, remove it from the game, which is fun. Whenever you encounter a piece of ice, if its strength is 3 or less, you remove 1 hosted power counter to bypass it. Use this ability only once per turn. And threat 4, whenever you encounter a piece of ice, you may remove this program from the game to bypass it. So you get 2 uses max out of it, and it's another way to flex your bypassing ability. It lets you get into servers without paying for it, the actual ice that we're encountering. It primarily, I think we're going to want to use Melantrogem on HQ or R&D to help keep our ability up. But this can also be used really, really effectively later in the game to help us pressure a central server, right? Or excuse me, to help us pressure a remote server. Again, as it gets later, the servers get bigger and bigger and probably more and more defended, especially in a deck like this where we can't check iced up remote very consistently. That's not what this deck is built for. So having something like this that lets us maybe flex a little bit towards the later game, if the corporation's ice placement isn't ideal, maybe we've disrupted them with Hermes over the course of the game, and they have a weaker piece of ice on the outermost of a remote and then a bigger piece of ice on the innermost. A single Melantrogem might allow us to challenge an entire remote server without needing an additional breaker. So that's kind of the card trick with this, is it's very expensive to bypass only 2 ice at the most. But if you can negotiate the situation and fix it so that, the cards are where you want them to be, in a way, so to speak, and make it so that you've kind of engineered how the corporation's board state is, this can be a really powerful effect later in the game to let us get into a server unexpectedly. So lots of cool uses. I think I kind of talked myself into this card, if I'm being honest. Anytime I've seen this hit the table, I've never been super impressed, but like, I kind of think it's pretty reasonable. Like, in something like this, I really like that effect, and I think it could be really, really, I do think it's very strong. It's cool. Very cool in a deck like this. I like in a deck like this where it can make me appreciate something where I might not normally think really favorably of it, and just the combination of all of these effects and having it work together, I think this is a really strong card for the card slot, which is cool. And then our last card is Physarum Entangler, 0-cost Trojan. Install only on a piece of ice. Whenever you encounter a piece of ice, if it is not a barrier, you may pay 1 credit for each subroutine if it has. If you do, bypass that ice. And when the corporation purges virus counters, trash this program. So it is a way, again, lets us bypass ice. Let's always full circle with this deck. Everything continues to feed back into our ID ability, which means it's helping us get through ice, and ideally it helps with HQ or R&D to give us the additional card, but it can always be used to pressure a remote server too. So really nice bit of kit here where it's free and it's relatively inexpensive. Just 1 credit per subroutine is a lot cheaper than most icebreakers, regardless of strength. So it's a really strong effect and something that makes a ton of sense here. It has the downside, of course, that when the corp purges, it trashes itself. But in startup, there aren't a ton of ways for the corp to purge efficiently. There's business as usual, which purges a single card, which in this case, of course, would be the Physarum. But without the corporation spending 3 clicks, it's hard to get rid of it. And if the corporation wants to spend 3 clicks just to, purge a single piece of ice, I really think that's an okay cost, and it's kind of worth it for us. It costs them a turn to get rid of 1 card, and we can just keep our thing going, because we probably don't want to run every turn with this deck either way. So, really neat, really cool. I think overall, it seems like a great deck, but as far as an assessment, I would say that it's going to we'll assess the other deck and then see how both of them are different. I suppose I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but yeah, this is a super cool deck. I can see why it did well. Can see why it did really well. And it looks like there's a bunch of people in the Bay Area that helped out. So shout out to everybody there for helping that come together. This is really good. Y'all did a really great job. Let's take a look at this Seb deck. Sebastião Souza Pessoa. A lot of text on this one. Buckle up. I'm actually going to take a bit of coffee here really quick. All right. So, Seb, Anarch, looking at red cards again. Whenever you take one or more tags, if you had no tags, you may install one connection resource from your grip, paying 2 credits less, as an additional cost to trash a connection resource with the basic action. The corp must trash 1 card from HQ. Kind of weird, kind of funny. It encourages you to take tags, and when you take tags, you get value. You get a click and 2 credits worth of value, right? So it costs you taking a tag, which costs you a click and 2 credits to remove, but then you get a click and 2 credits worth of value. So it, on the surface, it feels like a net zero part of the ability, and a lot of Seb decks, I think, are figuring out how to finesse that equation to make it so that it's not a click and 2 credits equals your ability. We're including cards to cut that down. We'll get into it. It's a really interesting, nuanced ability, because historically, Seb or tag me archetypes like this, where and what I mean by tag me archetypes is it encourages a riskier play style from the runner, where they take on tags, they take on their resource, but it grants them an additional benefit. And historically, it's just been quantity, so the more tags you get, the more powerful your effect has been. But with Seb, if you are tagged, your ability does nothing. You actually have mostly a blank ID if you're tagged already. So you want to keep the tag economy. You want to take a tag and give a tag, and take a tag and give it, or not take and give. Take a tag, remove a tag, take a tag, remove a tag, and it's finding how that flow is and where that's coming. That really helps. Like that's the trick. That's the trick with Seb. But if you do end your turn tagged as an additional cost, the corp must trash a card from HQ. So it also allows you to play maybe a bit riskier and encourages the corp or dissuades them, depending on how you look at it. It hurts them if they do trash your stuff. So it usually that part isn't as relevant, but I'm sure we'll get there. So the core, with these runner decks, I think I'm going to talk about kind of some core suites and then go from there. And with this deck, it is going to come down ultimately through Awasera Screw. This is super popular in all formats right now. It's a really good card. So 2 credits, resource connection, and take 1 tag as a cost. The ice you are encountering gets -2 strength for the remainder of this encounter. Use this ability only once per turn. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, so I'm going to take a minute. But anytime you see a card, if there is text in bold like this, so you see how take 1 tags in bold, that is a cost. So you must take, or the runner must take 1 tag in order to get the effect of giving the ice you are encountering -2 strength for the remainder of the encounter. Because sometimes it's unclear what these things mean, because the next effect says trash and 2 credits. Trash the ice you are encountering if its strength is 0 or less. So as a cost, I have to trash this card and pay 2 credits to trash the ice you are encountering if its strength is 0 or less. So this card does 2 things for us. The very first thing is it can give us a tag, which is really good because this helps us trigger our ability. This is a way that we can reliably say, I want to get some cards, I want to get some of these connections from my hand into the game onto the table, and this is a way that I can just have a way to just take a tag, trigger that, which is handy, can be really good. And it makes the ice you're encountering lower strength, so that is going to save us money down the line, right? Then, if the ice somehow has 0 or less strength, be it through, Awaceris Crew or a leech, which we'll talk about in a minute, we can get rid of Awaceris Crew, spend a little bit of money, and make that ice disappear, which is really good. That's a really, really strong effect. And even though this card only gives us a way to lower a piece of ice's strength by 2, there are other cards in this deck that will allow us to combo, because we probably don't want to delete the smaller pieces of ice, right? If it's only strength, if the ice strength was only 0 to 2 already, like 1 or 2, we probably have a way to break that ice pretty inexpensively already. However, if we have like a big 4 strength piece of ice or a 5 strength piece of ice that is gonna cost us a lot of resources every time we want to get through, I feel like we're gonna have ways that the crew can help us get there and delete a big piece of ice, and not only cost the corporation a lot of credits, but could blow a server wide open. And being able to do that and capitalize on it, so do it when the corporation doesn't have money to res another piece of ice, or it blows open HQ or R&D or even archives as Anarch, if you can just find the exploit or make your own exploit, you really can just start ripping it open in the board state. And that's, Anarchs have always been really good about that, is they are going to find the hole and then they're gonna worm their way in it and just bury themselves into it until they've pulled out everything that they can get. So it's a really cool kind of play style, I think. That, I don't know, maybe that's not how do you guys see Anarchs? I would love to know. That's always been the way I've played it. Like Noise has always been able to do this too. Obviously Val was always able to do it with blackmail and things, and Wizard would just ruin board states. So they've always had a different playstyle, but I like that kind of thing. So really powerful card in any board state. But before I get too far away, another resource that we have, 3 cost, and this is one if you've been around for a while you've seen. While you are encountering a piece of ice, it gets -1 strength. Nice little helps with the crew. Just again, helps us affect bigger ice easier. And this might not be a card that we play in every game, but this might be a card that is huge in some games, and that's why it's worth the include. I'm going to skip over and talk about a program, because it plays into the crew, and it kind of plays into that suite, or those cards, that package, we'll call it, I guess. This plays into the package as well. So it's a program, 1 cost. Whenever you make a successful run on the central server, place 1 virus counter on this program. And as a cost to spend a hosted virus counter, the ice you are encountering gets -1 strength for the remainder of the encounter. So if we have 2 or 3 counters on a leech, we can use just the leech to reduce the strength of the ice by 3. And it's another way to combo with our Awaceris crew to bring our ice strength down, to delete the really impactful pieces of ice. And it can entirely be possible too to just use leech to bring a piece of ice to 0 cost or 0 strength without even needing to take the tag. And board state might tell you how valuable that is, or whether it's better for you to take the tag. Because the other thing about this is crew costs 2 credits. So if you are running and you take a tag with Awaceris crew to reduce the piece of ice, reduce the strength of the ice by 2, you can use your Seb trigger, your Sebastião trigger, because now you've taken a tag, right? Now you can use that trigger to install the next Awaceris crew from your hand. So you're all ready to go for the next time that you want to destroy a piece of ice. And that kind of value is really good, and kind of is hard to equivocate just by saying like, well, it's just a click and 2 credits for a click and 2 credits later, right? Not always. That's not always how it works. So, yeah, this is at its core how we're going to control the board, right? And I will actually include one other card with this suite, and that's privileged access. So event, run 0 cost, play only if you are not tagged. Again, I think this bit of text is really awesome and really important because it requires us to have this play style where we take tags, we remove tags, we take tags, and we remove tags. And I feel like that's a much more balanced way to have a tag me deck, and I think it's really, really fun to play too. I've been playing Seb in Standard, and I've been having a blast. I can't always tell you, it's like I don't always know if I'm like making value, but it is so much fun when I get the triggers right. But anyway, I'm getting off. So, off topic here. So run archives. If successful, instead of breaching archives, take 1 tag. Again, we take a tag and we get a Seb trigger. When I take a tag with this event, you may install 1 resource from your heap, paying 2 less. And threat 3, when you take a tag with this event, you may install 1 program from your heap. Again, this card has a lot of text, and we're going to go through it all one by one and how this interacts with our ID, because this is really important at every stage of the game. So, first part. If we are successfully running archives, and usually it's worth noting, archives is going to be one of the least protected servers out there. Priority-wise, it's pretty low. HQ, usually most corps don't want you to see their hand. R&D, they don't want you to see the deck. And remotes, they'll ice them if they want to, right? It's always like priority. If it's an important thing, they're going to ice it. Archives usually is where trash goes. It's like where it's just part of the game. That's like your discard pile, right? Who cares? You don't need to protect that. But with privileged access, when you breach it, when it's successful, you take a tag. So just like we've talked about before, a tag lets us use our ID ability and install some of our resources. And I know we've been talking about Seb for way too long, and we have not talked about any of our connections besides crew. We'll get there. I promise you'll see how many cards this affects. But the point is it triggers our ID ability and lets us install something from our hand. So it moves us forward, gets us a card that way. Really good, right? Now that's because we took our tag with our ID. Now this card, when we take a tag with the card, we can install a resource from our heap, paying 2 less. You know what costs 2 that we just talked about? The Awasaris crew. And why is it in our heap? Because we just trashed it to delete a piece of ice. That's what we did it with them. Our crew took care of the ice. But we can get it back with our privileged access. Run archives, get our privileged access back. It comes back for free for the cost of the tag, which could have installed our other privileged access, right? Or excuse me, our other Awasaris crew. So it's possible to go from no Awasaris crew, we play a privileged access, suddenly we have 2 crew members again. That's really hard for a corporation to deal with, right? Like, we already deleted one of their ice. We are now threatening to delete 2 more of their ice. That's great. That's a really good effect. And then later in the game, after we've, done whatever else, we've played however many crews, threat 3, we can also install a program from our heap. So this isn't at a discount like the resources. And it is worth noting, by the way, before we get too far off topic, the first part, that resource, doesn't have to be a connection, which is pretty nice. It gives this card even more flexibility, because I do see a number of other expensive non-connections down here. So you can use it for a lot, not just crew, but this card also can just say you have 6 Awasaris crew in your deck. Great effect. Even if that's all it says, great effect. But we can get a program from our heap. And I think we'll use, most likely that's going to be a fermenter. That's going to be for money. But, sometimes it helps us get back our breakers if we need. Or it's just a flexible ability otherwise if we're playing, depending on what we're against. Whoo, that was a lot about Crew. That's a good card. If you haven't tried it yet, I definitely recommend playing Crew. But I think the last part to really round out our control, like we've talked a lot about deleting ice, we'll touch base on Hermes. Again, you saw this out of the Mercury deck that we just chatted about too. But Hermes is going to bounce ice. So whenever we are successful, whenever we are able to finally steal or they score, we can pop a unresed piece of ice back to HQ. So this puts the corporation in a really tough spot because they can either res their ice and have it get destroyed by the Aviserys crews, or they can not res the ice, save a bit of money, but if an agenda is scored or stolen, we're going to take their tempo away and try and open up a hole. And we can use it to, on our turn, we can use it to open up a remote server or to bounce something with advancement counters back to the corporation's hand. On the corporation's turn, if they spend their last click scoring out, advancing and scoring an agenda, we can use it to bounce, that one piece of ice that's been annoying us on HQ to get in HQ, or to bounce archives so we have a clean privileged access run, right? Just a really flexible card that lets us get in wherever we need to. So that core of cards is kind of what this deck is built around, and we want to control the board state of the corporation entirely. We want to be in charge of what is allowed. We want to be the ice police. We choose what ice stays and what ice goes, which is cool. So this all costs a lot of money to do. I've kind of been glazing over it because, yeah, it's just tags, right? All these things just take tags. It's fine. It costs a lot to remove tags, as it turns out. As I've mentioned, a click and a credit. So this deck needs to find a way to take advantage of that. So how do we do that? Let's look at our money, and I think this might kind of inform some other things. So first thing, and I'll talk about this first because I think this card is great and it combos so well with our privileged access that we talked about, is Fermenter. 1 cost a virus. When you install and when your turn begins, place 1 virus counter on this program. Click trash, gain 2 credits for each hosted virus counter. This is just a really nice, effective way to spend a little bit of money down and forget about it. Just forget you've played this card. You do not want, when I play this card, I do not want to click this for less than 8 credits, personally. And maybe that's wrong. I think I've definitely got into situations where I spend time clicking when I could have popped this for 4 or popped this for 6. But I think there's other things to do with our clicks, right? We can still draw cards. We can still fix our hand. And I'm never going to click it last click to gain money because that's not efficient. I would rather spend the click next turn, and that essentially gains me 2 credits, excuse me. So that's my mentality going into it. I don't know if that's specifically right, but this is just a great way to gain money. I think that goes without saying for startup. So it makes a lot of sense, and we can recur it with privileged access. So it's possible to play 3-4 fermenters in a game without really breaking a sweat. Makes a lot of sense for money. This also plays a liberated account, which we talked about, or excuse me, 3 liberated. So 6 credits. When you install, load 16. Click to take 4 credits. A bit slower of a card, but this is a really good way to help keep our money up and be effective with our money. And again, this is a good way to gain a lot of money. To spend 3, you can spend 3 click, gain 12 credits. That's a really efficient use of a few clicks too. So really, really nice. And remember, each of those is efficient to like 1 Sure Gamble. So this plays 3 of them. Again, staple. You see this everywhere. Dirty Laundry, we've talked about this in our in the Mercury deck. It's nice. It's still good even at full cost. 2 credits, gain 5 at the end of it. Encourages you to make runs. Good stuff. We can combo this with our crew if we want to make a run and trash stuff and kind of keep our tempo snowballing forward. So a couple of these make sense, and it gets us money from 2 credits up to 5 instead of spending, like I said, a few turns clicking for a credit. This can just get us back up to that bubble where we want to be. I'm going to talk about all of our resources here. So let's touch base on career fare. Install a resource from our grip, paying 3 credits less. So all of our cards cost a bunch of money, and the career fare is a good way to help get these cards on the board without paying our own capital up front. And even a free crew. Playing a crew for free is better than spending 2 of your own money. But spending 1 credit to play Earthrise is probably far better. I think we talked about this one a second ago too. Earthrise Hotel, 4 credits. When you install, load 3. Yeah, we did talk about this with Mercury, right? Similarly to Mercury, Seb wants cards because his ability lets him put cards on the board very quickly. So whereas it's comparable to Mercury, where Mercury is using the events and just play a card, discard a card, Seb is getting the card onto the board in order to get that effect going. But it still costs us the card from our hand, right? So Earthrise is a good way to just keep those cards coming in. Keep those options coming in, keep giving us this fuel or these ways to see more things. Because even if these cards end up in the bin and we end up trashing them, other cards later in the game let us use our archives, or excuse me, lets us use our heap as another place to install from. Like, again, privileged access. Let's install 2 different types of cards from our heap, right? So we can get cards back, even if we have to trash it. And again, Earthrise, free card draw, clickless card draw is really, really good, right? Iru, 2 credits connection resource. And as a click and take a tag, so that's a cost, right? A click and taking a tag. Run archives. If successful, instead of breaching archives, breach R&D. Use this ability only once per turn. Threat free. 3. Whenever you breach R&D during a run on archives, access 1 additional card. Again, this is a way, it's tag. It gives us another way to trigger our ID ability on our terms. And it gives us an alternate way to breach R&D, which is probably going to be easier because we want to keep hammering R&D as much as we can. We don't want the R&D to become a place that we've given up on. Because once we've given up trying to access through R&D, the corporation knows that we've given up accessing R&D. And they can just focus on the other servers that they want to protect. So whether that's archives or whether it's HQ, we can't just say, you know what, you're right, we're just going to hit archives or hit R&D through archives. We want to be able to intentionally hit all of the servers so the corporation doesn't know where our next attack is going to come from. And once Eero is on the board, it is always a threat that the corp knows about. But oftentimes we're going to be able to install Eero and use her at least once before the corporation has any chance to plug that hole up and make it so we're not accessing a bunch of cards. And Eero is also a really good combo. I'm going to skip a few cards for a minute to talk about Manuel. 2 cost resource connection again. Whenever you breach R&D or HQ or R&D while you are tagged, access an additional card. Threat 3, as an additional cost to trash this resource with the basic action, the corp must trash 1 card from HQ. So Manuel and Seb are best friends, and if you're tagged and the corporation tries to trash Manuel, it costs the corporation 2 cards from HQ in addition to the money late game, which is really good to protect himself from. But the combination of Iru and Manuel is really good for us because the Iru stays in play, we take a tag, right? And that triggers our Seb ability, our ID ability. So Iru has us take a tag. Seb lets us install our Manuel for free. And now we're running what is probably a unprotected or mostly unprotected archives. And when we're successful and we breach, we're actually going to hit R&D, and we're going to see 3 cards deep on R&D. So not only is this a line of attack that the corporation might not have been anticipating in that moment, sure, a seasoned player will probably expect that at some point in the game, but if you can pull that off when the corporation is not suspecting it, or they're not necessarily set up to recover from that, like if you have a Hermes out and you see, 1 or even 2 points if you get lucky, and you can rip up some of those other pieces of ice that are already protecting R&D, like I mentioned, or protecting HQ, you've just set the corporation back while uncovering a brand new threat that the corporation has to deal with still. And that's why I say you oftentimes can use Iru and you can get her down at a time where you're going to leverage it to put the corporation in such a bad spot. It's going to take them multiple turns to recover at best. And it's a really cool pinch point. And I like how these cards interact. And this is a combination that I've played with quite a bit. Again, I've been playing him in standard, but in startup, it's even harder for for the corporation to account for, right? Because it's like they have less cards, they have less ability to deal with that in startup as opposed to standard. So it's a great combo. It's something that can easily close a game out, once you get to mid game, and it can close a game out quick if it's done right. Friend of a friend, 3 cost, resource connection, click and trash to gain 5 and remove a tag, click and trash to gain 9 and take a tag, use this ability only if you are not tagged. Really neat flex card. You can either use it to combo with your ability to install stuff and gain a bunch of money, or you can use it to, as I said, take a tag, remove a tag. Friend of a friend can facilitate either part of that process, and it gives you tempo and leverage when you do it, right? So if you're set up a little bit better to remove tags, let's say, friend of a friend can give you a tag. Hey, look, you know what? You got a way to remove tags, bud? I got you. I'm going to give you a tag, let you push you forward, and now you can use those cards that you already got. Vice versa. Let's say you have a bunch of ways to take tags, but you don't have any ways to remove tags. It's like, all right, cool. You pop off. You got me right now. Let Seb, let you as a player use the cards that you've already installed to take the tag and get your value. And then friend of a friend, come in. You know what? Don't you worry. We'll take care of that tag. And as a bonus, I'll give you some more money to help you recover. So really nice way, either part of the process. The friend of a friend just facilitates it. And this at 3 cost is perfect for your career fair too. I really like friend of a friend anyway, but career fair is that combo seems like it would feel really good. Getting it down for free and having that ability maximizes the value you get out of friend of a friend. So I think that's a cool combo. I like to see it. Hannah wields Palintra, resource connection, 2 cost. First option, click, gain a click, run a remote server. When that run ends, if it was unsuccessful, take 1 tag. Use this ability only once per turn, and then click and trash, gain 2 clicks, remove 1 tag. This is another card that kind of both gives you all of the answers that you want as Seb, and can help you resolve your answers while giving you value, right? So Seb is using his friends the best he can, and with Hannah, it's the first option. It is clicklessly letting you run a remote server. That's a free run. At its core, that's great value. If it's unsuccessful, which usually the corporation is going to try and want to make it unsuccessful, right? You take a tag. Normally, tag might not be good. As Seb, tag's not bad, right? You get to install cards, get tempo, keep pushing forward. Not bad at all. Then the second part, click trash, gain 2 clicks, remove 1 tag. So Hannah can also fix the problem that she solves. Because you can't, it doesn't say that you can only use Hannah once per turn. You can only use the first part once per turn. So you could effectively use both parts, click, gain a credit, run a remote server. Let's say it's unsuccessful. You take a tag. You get your Seb ability to install a card and add a discount. So you still have 4 clicks. Let's say you used her click 1, right? You still have 4 clicks because make a run, gain a click. That's what she says. Pretty good. But now you're tagged. Well, now let's spend a click and trash her to gain 2 clicks. Remove a tag. So now you're back better than you were a second ago. You got more than 4. You got 5. I got a full 5 clicks there to use. And I've already got value out of my ID ability once, and I've reset, and I can use it again, because Seb doesn't say once per turn. It's just as long as you are not tagged. So if you can keep that economy going, right, that we're, like we talked about, do you want the tags to go, and you want the tags to come. Go and add, you know? So Hannah and Friend of a Friend help you do that and maximize your value. And whereas Friend of a Friend does it economically with your tags, Hannah does it with your clicks. And those two together are really, really strong. And I think that's a cool combination of cards, right? Because they both trash themselves. And I think that's really important to note here really quick before we get off of Hannah. It's that we play 3 of this card. So this really, I think, is a way for this deck to remove tags. I think that's the biggest benefit. And maybe that's been a problem with any time I've played Seb too, is I am more hesitant to use that effect, but I think playing 3 here really encourages you as a player to use that secondary effect to its maximum potential. So that's a way for I need to pivot my headspace on that card on Hannah. I think that's a stronger way to do it. We talked about the Ice Carver. We talked about Liberated. We talked about Manuel. Telework Contract. So not only do we have Liberated, no, I was wrong. Telework Contract is 2 influence earlier, but we have Telework Contract. So we never want to click for credits in this deck, which is actually an admirable way to go about deck construction. Is they'll click for money. It doesn't seem they have no problem, but they will not click for. We never want to click for a credit. So we can telework to click for 3 credits. We can Liberated to click for 4. You know, we can Sure Gamble to click for 4, or we can Dirty Laundry. We have ways to click to get money, and we have a lot of ways to get money. Just those cards alone, that's 10 cards of our deck, right? 3 Liberated, 2 Telework, 3 Sure Gamble, 2 Dirty Laundry. So that's almost a quarter of our cards right there are essentially click to gain more than 1 credit. Makes some sense when you say it out loud, but I think that it's a core tenet of this deck. And the Fermenter. I can't believe I forgot about the Fermenter. So all of these ways for us to maximize the earning potential of our cards. And I think getting on board with that and making sure that we are not clicking for credit. I feel like drawing a card is better than clicking for a credit with this, right? Or installing a leech, or installing a Fermenter, I'd much rather do than click for a credit. So I think doing all of these things is better and a better use of our time, which makes a lot of sense. I think click economy can be hard with Seb just to get under control. And this has a number of ways to maximize click economy with wheels and friend of a friend. And, with this kind of mindset, I think is how we have to look at it. And I don't think I talked about it in this deck, but it also plays a Bahia Bands. And in this deck, we probably only want to play a Bahia Bands if it removes us a tag, I would guess. Unless we're getting like wild rips, or like, unless our Hannah friend of a friend combo is just really, really rolling, and we don't need the card draw, or excuse me, we don't need to remove a tag with Bahia Bands. I feel like that's just another way to do that, and combo it with another effect where it's still just 2 credits. So it's all really good. And to round out our breakers, all of this stuff we've talked about a lot of control without talking about breakers. So these are no stranger for Anarch Suites. First one, Decoder Buzzsaw. 4 costs, so pretty expensive. Break up to 2 1 credit. Break up to 2 Code Gate subroutines. 3 credits for 1 strength. 3 strength. So big Code Gate breaker, big decoder. The downside of this is it costs money to make it bigger. But again, we have Leech. We have a way to just slowly gain virus counters over time. And then a successful run essentially saves us 3 credits. So that value is really, really good. Or if it's something if it's a big Code Gate, and we might just consider nuking it with Awaceris Crew. So we have a lot of answers to something if it's too big for our Buzzsaw. And our Buzzsaw is really efficient at cutting through lower strength Code Gates, right? Because for 1, we can break 2 subroutines, which is really efficient. So it's an efficient breaker and at its strength, and we never want to actually use the secondary effect to increase its strength again in a perfect world. Our barrier breaker, kind of the same, if we're being honest. 3 cost cleaver. Interface 1, break up to 2 barrier subroutines. And for 2 cost, we can increase our strength by 1. And its base strength is 3. We do not want to increase our strength. And this is a little bit less egregious if we have to, compared to the Buzzsaw. But it is still not ahead. If we have to continuously pay money to increase the strength of our cleaver to break barriers, we're going to lose the game over time. Like, we are gonna be out of it in the long term. So if a barrier is in our way, a big barrier is in our way, we should probably crew it. And if it's a little barrier, let's just cleaver on through it, right? Big hefty blade, just chop right through. And it's efficient in doing so. So it makes a ton of sense. And our last breaker is Echelon. And this program gets +1 strength for each installed icebreaker, including this one. 3 costs, by the way. An interface, 1 credit, break 1 sentry subroutine, and 3 credits +2 strength. And this one it's not a bad. Oh, I think I understand now. I just realized. So I was going to say that I don't know why this isn't just Mimic. Burp, 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 burp. That was me 2 minutes ago having that thought. Maybe you're there too. Why? It saves influence. It's already, a Mimic is 3 strength. You have a Leech. We have crew. We're already going to be dealing with this bigger sentries. Like, we have, if it's a big sentry, we're going to nuke it. We don't want a sentry higher than strength 3 to exist, no matter what. But Echelon, once we get, to that point of the game, is also strength 3 and costs 1 credit to break a sentry subroutine, right? Because Echelon gets +1 strength for each installed icebreaker, including this one. So Echelon will never be strength 0 in effect. It's always minimum strength 1. And if we have our Buzzsaw and our Cleaver out, Echelon's strength 3. Echelon's a Mimic, right? And it costs 1 credit to break a sentry subroutine. That's the only text on Mimic, right? 1 credit, break a sentry server. That's all Mimic does. But Echelon gives us the ability, it gives us an out. And that's what we're spending influence for here, right? Is we are saying we want the ability to have an out to affect bigger pieces of bigger ice, bigger sentries, which I think is pretty fair. I think that's actually a really good idea, just analyzing the meta for startup, which, as I mentioned Archer, in my startup game yesterday, I got wrecked by an 8 strength Archer. I was playing a game with Isaac Liberdad, and my opponent moved Isaac to a server with Archer and gave Archer an advancement counter, because that's what Isaac says he can do, and gives the Archer +2 strength. And suddenly an 8 strength barrier, or excuse me, 8 strength sentry is really, really hard to deal with, especially one that has 4 subroutines that are quite rude. If you're familiar with Archer, it's a very rude card. So, and if I had a Mimic, there'd be almost no shot of being able to deal with a piece of ice like that. It's unreasonable. But Echelon is a way, it's not a cheap way, mind you, but you can do it. It gives you the ability to. And sometimes that's all you need. And that's like just knowing when to take that shot is the most important thing. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it costs you 20 credits if it wins you the game. Like, that's why Big Deal's a card, right? It doesn't matter if it costs you 17 credits if it wins you the game. The money's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We all end the game with 0 credits. So, yeah, makes sense. Pretty good. Pretty good. And this one is, I think both of these decks actually kind of they both have the same approach. So let's take a step back for a minute, right? We just looked at 2 very, very different runner decks. We're looking at this, Seb. If you're just checking in now, hi, welcome in. Thanks for stopping by. We've been looking at some Startup Worlds events from 2024, and we've been kind of looking at this Mercury deck, and we've been looking at this Seb deck, and just kind of doing a detailed breakdown and how these cards are all working together. And both of these decks are trying to not interact with ice as best as they can. And how I mean that is Seb, this deck we just talked about, is primarily trying to destroy ice with the crew and make it so we don't deal with impactful ice, right? We get rid of it, we trash it, and then any ice that is left over, it costs us trivial amounts of credits to get through. And the Mercury deck is saying, you can have your ice, we're just not gonna deal with it. And maximizing the potential off of not dealing with ice. And I think Seb is doing it as well. They're just doing it from different angles. Whereas almost like Anarchs are doing it in a just tear the corporation down and make it so they feel exposed. The criminals are doing it by letting the runner feel safe in a way. And like, yeah, you have all your ice and you have all your things. You know, you have your 3 deep server, sure, but I'm still going to get in with a Melandridum and a Estebrado, and you can't stop me, you know? And it's just like, you might feel cozy and secure, but you're not, which is kind of fun. But, yeah, I think that's the interesting thing here, is that both of these decks are just trying to not interact with ice, or do it, I mean, as efficiently as possible feels like a given statement to say, because at the end of the day, this is about efficiency. This game is about being efficient, but they're doing it in a really smart way, and like through multi-access and just like raw control. So I think that's an interesting thing, right? Because like, man, I really want to see if I'm like all out of whack here. We're gonna go on an adventure real quick. We're gonna go on. we're gonna go on an adventure. We're gonna see standard ban list. Let's see what we can find for startup here. Because oh man, if I've been like, have I just been cooked in that summary balance update 24.9 trick shot? No trick shot. Okay. All right, yeah, we're not cooked. Yeah, we haven't lost it. Cause that's the startup ban list 2409. That's the most up-to-date one. Yeah, okay. We're great. Trick shot's excellent. All hail trick shot. that's the theme here. Trick shot's good. Trick shot OP. If you can afford the influence for trick shot, play trick shot. If you're playing green, play trick shot. But yeah, honestly, both of these decks are really cool. I like that the efficiency. So let's see what we can take from that, right? So where are we? We got lost. So this is what we've been working with, or this is, I guess, where we've been. And see, this has like cheeky tricks and stuff, but it's just not doing the same thing. Like, our tricks feel like cute, and the tricks that we were just talking about feel effective. And I think we need to find a way to bring those things together and, find some harmony. And I think it's just a bit muddy right now. I think it's just a bit muddy. I would like more windows, honestly. All right, let's start playing a little bit. The Fizarum's good, but I don't think we need to, because it's something that we can recur with Muse if we absolutely need. The Spree feels bad, honestly. I don't think I've gotten Spree off in a reasonable way. I think we can cut that for now. I'd love to find a way to get more window of opportunity. I think this is super good, especially in Ari. I also really wanted to find a leech, because our stuff isn't really ultra efficient. And right now we have a conduit. So our multi-access is conduit and trick shot. And Ari feels like she really wants to control. But we want to be able to get in everywhere, get in all the servers, or threaten all the servers, I think is more accurate. We, at the same time, making those runs higher impact, and maximize our value. And I'm not sure, and Ari, it's totally possible that Ari is just not the person for us in startup. That could be the real learning curve. If anyone's been playing Ari in startup, what have you been doing? Has there been anything that's been working, or what has been working? Because I'm sure you've had more success. I'm not used to playing Ari. I'm more of an Anarch player, I would say, than a Shaper player. So all of the Galaxy Brain stuff that you can do with them, I'm definitely not in the loop as I should be. My Shaper love was Kit with Yogg and Yoggosaurus and having my cute little dinosaur. So that was by far my favorite thing with Shaper, but it was never great. Again, it was a cute thing I could do. It was not an effective thing I could do. So I think we are trying to figure out what options we got. If we wanted the pressure spike and save some influence on our cleaver, we can. It just costs us a bunch of money, right? I don't think we want to play Living Mural, because this kind of has the problem of all our other wild and crazy Trojan stuff, right? Echelon feels good. I like the Echelon. The Unity feels good. Unity is great, especially with Slap Vandal. Increases the strength of that. What else did we say we wanted? We wanted a Leech, I think. We wanted to find a way to get a Leech. I want to keep the Sachis, because I think the Sachis plus Windows are good. And the 2 Aesops and 2 Urban Art. Man, I'm just... maybe I'm just not a Shaper player anymore. That's an option. Is that an option? No. That's not an option. I guess 3 Influence. 3 Influence makes sense to cut a Physarum. We can always get it. We still... Wow. We've somehow ended back up at 45 cards. Look at us go. Now, what has this done? What has this accomplished? We still have draw. We still have some money with our sure gambles. We're playing 3 Trick Shot, which feels like a success. Window of Opportunity is a great combo with the Sachi, or Sasi. I don't know how to say that card. Because it combos, we can spend 2 credits to get 6, right? So, because the order, the very first text is lets us install something, and then we can run any server and derez a piece of ice. So we could, in theory, window Sachi for 2 credits, or less if we have an Urban Art up. Yeah, so window Sachi, and then gain a bunch of money because it's going to get derezed and then re-rezed that run. And we've maximized our value with that. And it feels like a pretty decent way to gain money, if I'm being honest. But I just wonder what I guess our end game with this is going to be Conduit. Either, you know what? I think Conduit's... I think Conduit's a trick in this. I mean, maybe. If we keep the Cleaver, is it? If we keep the Cleaver, is it with the Trick Shots? Yeah, I think Conduit's... Well, then why do we need 3 Urban Art? And 3 Aesops? See, something always just feels weird with something like this. But with the Egret, we can also get value. No. You know what? Let's not stray too far. Single Conduit can close out the game if our Trick Shots with... That's just the only reason I would think about cutting the Conduit, is that the Trick Shot might do everything that the Conduit does for us, but better, because they're going to want to purge the Physarum away. You know what? We're back on it. We're cutting out the Conduit. It's gone. We're going to find another way. We're going to find another way to do this. Mayfly is kind of cheeky. I feel like that's another one of our cute plays, right? And honestly, Mayfly might slap. Mayfly might be good. Because with okay, here's why. I'm thinking Mayfly, we can combo with Ari, and Mayfly can break multiple things. And it trashes itself when it gets used anyway. So it is negligible if we install it with Ari, with our ID ability. But it could help us break something unexpectedly. We'll keep that in mind, right? We'll keep that in mind, because I don't think any of these other cards we want to play. Even the Egret, I'm kind of tempted to cut this without the Conduit, and you know what? We're cutting the Egret. It's another silly card we don't need. Peach of Shaw we probably don't need. Well, then who are we? Without Peach of Shaw, are we Ari? What are we playing? Why are we playing it? Why are we playing Ari? Let's keep looking. Let's not spiral trying to figure out our last Ari card here. It's not worth it. Verbal, Valentina, Urban Art, Telework. This is also hard pill to swallow, if I'm being honest. The 3 Urban Arts and the 2 Aesops, it's like, I really need one of them. We really need to have one to make this deck work. But it's, if you don't get them, it feels bad. I mean, Earthrise, I don't have money for Earthrise. Who are we kidding? Another telework would be good, but we can't put in for telework. That's called cheating. Don't have the influence for buy bans. Burner doesn't really get us money. We can't play Creative Commission. Dirty Laundry is okay. We have 2 card slots now, so 2 of Dirty Laundry isn't bad. Honestly, Test Run is not bad either, but it's expensive. I don't think we want to do Dirty Laundry. Might be winning it for me right now. Do we have any? What was our neutral? Did any of these get us money? Smartware. I don't think that's a good card. I don't think Smartware. I mean, I've seen it. People play it. So really, maybe that's on me. Maybe I'm just dunking on Smartware too much. What other options here? I mean, Cataloger is good, but no, we have everything else with Cataloger. Again, I think Cataloger is a card that would go in instead of Trick Shot. So if and when Trick Shot gets banned from startup, I think Cataloger, or honestly, we could revisit our Conduit, our wonderful Conduit idea. But for right now, let's play with the cards that the game allows us to, right? See, none of these are doing it for me. And we don't have influence unless we start cutting stuff. And I don't want to cut the Phaserum. What are we playing Urban R for? Sachi? Pizza Shaw? Slap Vandal? Yeah, I guess so. Let's Laundry. We're doing it. Laundry. Just money. Money seems good. Let's see what the draws look like on this. Let us see where we're at. Okay. Low-key, that kind of slaps, huh? That's pretty good. Right? We run. We install. Maybe we Trick Shot. We can Trick Shot and install this and put pressure on. Then we loot costs as our Trick Shot. I think we just run and install the Sachi. We can Urban Art. Now we immediately have that going. Probably should have drawn first, but I think we draw again, actually. I think in this case we would draw again. That's fine. Because now we're going to pull this back to our hand. We're going to get 2 credits on this. So we can play the DZ. We can run, install the Saucy. Hopefully, even if we don't, even if it goes on something that's already on, we just want to keep fueling our Urban R. Honestly, at this point of the game, I would be considering sticking Saucy on a rezzed piece of ice because the Corp might trash the piece of ice that it's on. An unrezzed piece of ice, I could imagine the Corp trashing it just to turn off our Urban Art. Because this economy, I think if we can get Urban Art rolling from turn 1, it's going to get 2 free credits a turn. That's like really strong value. And even if we get 2 fires of Sachi, that's an extra 6 credits of value. And later in the game, we can pawn everything off too. So it's like, it becomes a pretty tempting value proposition at some point. So that's kind of cool. And then the Diesel lets us draw some cards. We got more draw, and I think this is definitely going to be a hand that because we can play cards, get stuff on the board. We can draw more cards, see things, and this is fire. Like we got our Aesops, we got our Coalescence. Hopefully by then we have a telework that we can pump a few times. We've bopped a Sachi back to our hand and installed it for free with DZMZ. Like, this is great. That was a good start. That's a good start. Let's see if we can do something like that again. And I will say, thank you for sticking with me this far. I won't have time to play today, so we're gonna make these changes, and I'll try and get in a game or two, or more than that, over the weekend. But in person, there's a tournament this weekend. I'm trying to see if I can finagle some things to go down in OC. So I would love to give these a go. I actually don't know if it's. I think it might be a standard tournament, but neither here nor there. At any rate, something for me to look into. I'm going to. So this is, again, I mean, we don't have the immediate value. We keep this hand, right? Because we have a bunch of money. We have one of our breakers. We have a coalescence. And this sets us up. We have the art, and now we have the outs of the Slap Vandal and the Sachis to try and get us some money with the urban art. So, you know, in this hand, I would definitely like click, install. I think this is probably what my turn would be. And it seems I like clicking early. I like clicking to draw early just to see things, right? And actually, maybe I wouldn't have installed the coalescence. I probably would have done the telework and the art. And it sucks because not the art. We do this. We get money. We put the telework down. Because next turn I want to set up for lily pad coalescence. Right? And we draw with that. And then we get our slap and we can get our urban art down. And just keep it rolling. Keep our tempo going. But honestly, even those like few changes, I feel really, really good about. So let's Aesops. That's perfect. Sure Gamble. Great. Another Trojan. And the difference between this and the last deck that we had made is that these cards are all now cards I want to play. And that's something I think that's like I want to play when I get them. And that's a good clarification to make is I put less cards in this deck that are situationally useful, or like Egret is a card that I think is a really powerful effect, but it's, if I had that, we just drew what this is looking at 13 cards in. Let's draw a couple more. So if I had Egret here, I would not, almost assuredly not be thinking about playing it. If I overdrew, I think Egret is by far the worst card of any of these ones that I've drawn. I would not want to just put it on the board. I wouldn't want to get it out just to like save room. Like some of these cards I can also just get on the board to save my hand, to save from hand size, right? Like Aesops, 1 credit. Telework, 1 credit. Sachi, 1 credit. These cards are easy for me to get on the board and extract value out of. An Egret at 2 credits, I wouldn't play it. It would literally just be a card that gets discarded from my hand, and then maybe I consider using a Muse on it down the line. So we're just removing cards like this that feel good, I guess. They're like that seem good, that I want to be good. And I think part of that also comes with testing and playing, and like I've seen it enough, I've played the decks enough that I also kind of know what I have wanted to see and what I have not wanted to see. But even here, this is doing something a bit differently. This is actually still a very different deck. I'm going to be clear. This is very different from the decks that we looked at today, because this is a control deck. Well, I guess all of the runner decks that we've looked at are control, but we're just trying to line ourselves up and make our optimum runs and just make it so the corp can never keep us out, even if they think that they can. And, you know, we'll get a trick shot off, and we'll get a trick shot and then run the remote, and we can do all these things and set ourselves up as much as we can, but we're just trying to lock it down. And I don't know, I still think it could be Conduit. I think we'll try and push this out quite a bit next week. I want to see how this deck comes together and get some games in, and we'll get some reps in and see how this goes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm gonna go look up this tournament information. I saw it got posted on our Discord here pretty right before I started streaming, and it got posted. So I need to go take a look at it and see what the details of that are. So I'm gonna go try and hope I can make it. Let's try and rearrange some things. So thank you very much for watching. I hope we've found some information, let you analyze your runner deck a bit better than you were able to before, and figure out what your block was. Or I figured out what my block was anyway, or at least opened my eyes to some cards that I previously wasn't really thinking with the same light on. So really excited to give these a go. And thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.